Never stop reading the Bible. Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're jumping into 2 Chronicles, chapters 17 through 20. It's all about King Jehoshaphat of Judah. He's often mentioned as, one of Judah's really righteous kings.
Yeah, and what's really striking, I think, as you read these chapters, is how active he is. He's not just sitting back, he's actively trying to shape things, both spiritually and, practically.
Right.
Chapter 17 kicks off right after his father Asa, and you immediately see this focus on religious reform in Judah.
Okay, so let's dig into that. Chapter 17. Religious reform is key, but he's also trying to keep things stable with Israel, the northern kingdom, right?
Yeah.
Preventing border spats.
Exactly. It's like a 2-pronged approach from the start. And verses 1 to 6 show us he's also building up Judah's military defenses. So it's this mix of spiritual focus and practical security. He clearly saw them as linked, I think. Not just hoping for divine help, but also making sure they were strong.
And then there's that really interesting move. In his 3rd year, he sends out teachers of the law, going city to city, actually instructing the people. What do you make of that? It seems pretty forward-thinking.
It really does. I mean, it suggests he understood that if people actually knew the law, it would build unity, a shared foundation. It wasn't just for the elites in Jerusalem. He wanted everyone on board, grounded in the same principles. Strengthening Judah from the inside out, sort of.
And maybe it worked, because the next part, verses 10 to 19, talked about his power growing. It even gives specific numbers for troops and commanders. It sounds like Judah was becoming pretty influential.
It certainly paints that picture. And you have to wonder, don't you, if that growing strength was partly because that internal unity, that shared understanding he'd fostered.
Could be.
But then chapter 18 shifts gears a bit. We get this alliance with King Ahab of Israel, which is sealed by marriage. Jehoshaphat's son, Jehoram, marries Ahab's daughter, Athaliah.
Yeah, that's a big step. Politically, maybe it made sense, but Ahab's kingdom was, spiritually very different from Jehoshaphat's focus, wasn't it?
Totally different. And then Ahab throws this big feast for Jehoshaphat and says, hey, come help me fight Aram to get Ramoth-Gilead back.
And right away, you see the contrast. Jehoshaphat says, essentially, hold on, let's ask the Lord first. He wants prophetic guidance.
Which is really telling, isn't it, compared to Ahab? It brings up that whole question of where leaders turn when big decisions have to be made.
Definitely. So Ahab parades out his, 400 prophets?
Yeah, 400.
And they all say, go for it, you'll win. But Jehoshaphat isn't convinced. He asks, isn't there anyone else?
Right, he senses something's off. Which leads them to Micaiah, the one prophet willing to speak the truth, even though it's bad news.
And it is bad news. Micaiah predicts defeat.
He does. And for telling the truth, he gets thrown in prison. It really highlights how tough it can be to, speak truth to power, and how important it is for leaders to actually listen even to things they don't want to hear.
So they ignore Micaiah, go into battle.
And just like Micaiah said, it's a disaster.
The Arameans defeat them, Ahab dies in the fight, and Jehoshaphat, he barely gets away.
He does escape. Which brings us to chapter 19. He gets back to Judah, and immediately the seer Jehu confronts him.
Yeah, basically tells him off for allying with the ungodly Ahab. That must have stung, getting that kind of rebuke right after a near-death experience.
You'd think so. But what's amazing is Jehoshaphat's reaction. He doesn't seem to argue or get defensive. He goes straight back to Jerusalem and starts another round of reforms.
Yeah.
He seems to have learned something. He's willing to change course.
It's interesting, too, the text points out his name means Jehovah has judged. Maybe that sense of accountability made him more open to correction.
That's a great point. And this time, he's really hands-on. He travels around Judah himself, from Beersheba all the way up to Ephraim.
Doing what, exactly?
Promoting worship, appointing judges in the cities, setting up systems. He instructs the judges very clearly.
Yeah.
Judge fairly, fear God, no bribery. And he also sets up Levites and priests back in Jerusalem. Their job is to handle matters related to God, but also legal disputes between people. It's quite a structure.
Right, trying to create a just and godly society, top to bottom.
Exactly. But then trouble brews again in chapter 20. A huge army, Moabites, Ammonites, and others, comes marching against Judah.
So, faced with this massive invasion, what does Jehoshaphat do? Panic?
No, his first move is spiritual. He calls for a fast across all of Judah. And then he stands before the people of the temple and prays this incredibly powerful prayer, laying it all out before God.
That's quite a leadership moment, isn't it? Public vulnerability, turning to faith in a crisis.
Absolutely. It unites the people, focuses them, And then God responds. The Spirit comes upon Jahaziel, a Levite.
And what's the message?
Victory. Jahaziel prophesies that God will fight for them. They won't even need to fight this battles themselves. Just show up, stand firm, and see God's deliverance.
Wow. So believe the prophecy and just watch.
Pretty much. Verse 20 is key here. Jehoshaphat tells the people, believe in the Lord your God, and you will be upheld. Believe his prophets, and you will succeed.
So what happens? Do they just stand there?
Well, they march out, but instead of soldiers leading the way, Jehoshaphat puts the singers out front, praising God.
Singers against an army.
Singers.
Yeah.
And as they start singing, the text says the Lord set ambushes against the invading armies, and they basically turned on each other and destroyed themselves.
Incredible. So Judah wins without even lifting a sword in that fight.
That's how it's described. A miraculous victory directly linked to their faith and obedience to the prophecy.
What a story.
It really is. The rest of the chapter talks about the aftermath, the great spoil they collected, and the peace Judah experienced afterward because nations feared God after hearing about this.
So the chapter then wraps up his reign.
Yeah, it summarizes his reign, mostly positive, sticking close to God like his father Asa did, though not removing all the high places. And it mentions a later shipbuilding project with the king of Israel that didn't go well. It failed, actually.
So even this really righteous king had moments that weren't perfect. A little reminder of complexity.
Exactly. It shows that even a predominantly faithful reign can have, well, missteps or ventures that don't align perfectly.
These chapters really give you a lot to think about regarding leadership, faith, alliances, and consequences.
Definitely. That tension between trusting God completely and making practical, sometimes flawed human decisions, it runs all the way through.
From the Center Studio.